Hello and good evening, everybody. For this EDIC one, this is the class for respiratory. The topic is respiratory medicine. So, first question is: this is a capnographic trace below could be explained by. What is this? This is an capnographic trace of an esophageal intubation, endobronchial intubation, bronchospasm, or hyperventilation. Yes, you can answer in the chat box. Someone has written A. Yes. Anyone else want to attempt A? Yeah, most of you have written the answer as A. Let's see what the answer is. 1 meter. So the answer is correct. This is A. This is a capnographic trace of an esophageal intubation. What happens in esophageal intubation? Initially, CO2 is registered on capnograph, which disappears over a few breaths. In endobronchial intubation, what will happen is there is a gradual rise in EtCO2 since the alveolar minute ventilation is much reduced and therefore the partial pressure of CO2 in the blood rises. Okay. Other we will see in the just one slide we can see and we can then discuss. This is just one. Okay, so these are the common waveforms of EtCO2 which can come in your exam. Usually what happens is in EDIC 1 exam, one or two ECGs, one or two waveforms, ventilator waveform may be there or EtCO2 waveform may be there. They come in the EDIC 1 exam. So you should be well versed with such type of questions. So first one, there is a sudden loss of waveform. It can occur in ET tube discussion connections, dislodgements, loss of circulatory function. Decreased EtCO2 may be due to the cuff leak, ET tube in hypopharynx or partial obstructions. CPR assessment to maintain a minimum of 10 mm of Hg. And sudden rise, if it occurs during CPR, it is ROSC is achieved. In bronchospasm, which was written, there is a shark fin type of appearance. Can you see? Asthma, COPD, there is a shark fin type of appearance in EtCO2. Hypoventilation, the duration may be increased and E2CO2 may be high. In hyperventilation, the CO2 is low and the frequency is increased. And in decreased EtCO2, it may be due to the apnea or sedation. Patient is not breathing itself, so the CO2 doesn't come out. Apart from this also, you can read regarding EtCO2 and capnographic trace from other books also. Most of the things I have covered of it. Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. So next question is: patient in high dependency unit has pneumonia and is hypoxic at room air. When deciding which method of oxygen administration is appropriate, which of the following statements is false? Read the question very carefully. They are asking which of the following statement is false. The first option is maximum inspiratory flow may exceed 30 liters per minute during spontaneous breathing. Nasal cannula significantly improves oxygenation even if the patient breathes through the mouth. A Venturi mask uses Bernoulli principle. Hudson mask is a fixed performance device and anesthesia face mask increases the dead space. Yes, someone has answered B. Other who wants to attempt this? Which one is the false out of this 5? This is a question regarding oxygen delivery devices. B. Most of you have answered it as B. The correct answer is D. D. What is the D? D was, sorry, D was Hudson mask is a fixed performance device. It is not that. It is the false statement. Why? See, during the spontaneous breathing, maximum capacity can go up to 30. That was correct. That is the correct one. Now, the Venturi, the second option was Venturi. The Venturi effect, it works on the Bernoulli's principle, which states that the gas passes through the constriction and falls that allows a second gas to be entrained. And the Venturi mask has a constriction through which oxygen flows, and entrainment is a fixed ratio depending upon the size of constriction and flow of the oxygen. This allows a high volume of gas known as FiO2 to be available during inspiration. Okay, the B, most of you answered, that was the mouth breathing with nasal cannula. In this, what happens is there is a Venturi effect is created in the nasopharynx. While even if the patient is breathing through the mouth, because of this, the oxygen enriched air entrains through the nose during inspiration, although performance may be variable. Now, regarding Venturi and Hudson masks, they are loose fitting and have holes permitting ready elimination of waste gases. They do not significantly increase the dead space. They have written that regarding the dead space. Regarding anesthetic face mask, they have a tight seal, they are bulky, and this usually increases the dead space. Okay. Next, which are the following good predictors of increased hospital mortality in patient with COPD during mechanical ventilation? All are true except. So, see, in the last question, what they wrote, which is the false statement. In this, what they're writing is all are true except means again you have to find out which one is the false statement out of the following. Okay, in EDIC exams, to confuse, we are in great tension, we have to complete the exam. They give such type of statements, either find the false statement or all are true except. So you should be very vigilant regarding that. Just don't see the word true and quickly mark which is the true statement. Okay, be very vigilant. So which one of the following is false out of this? Mechanical ventilation lasting for more than 72 hours, FEV1 less than 30% predicted prior to ICU admission, one failed extubation attempt, or presence of comorbidities. Yes, someone has answered as B. Okay, let's see what the answer is. The answer correct, someone has marked B, because FEV1 is not the predictor. Okay, the best predictor of increased mortality is presence of Apache 2 defined comorbid illness, requirement of more than 72 hours of mechanical ventilation, and failed extubations. Okay, the survival rates were also much better in patients with previous episodes of mechanical ventilation. The in-hospital mortality rate of ventilated by acute exacerbation of COPD was 15%. Patient with COPD ventilated for other reasons had much higher in-hospital mortality, that is 22. Just okay. FEV1, what about FEV1? It is an important predictor of long-term survival, but it doesn't predict the short-term outcome in COPD patients requiring mechanical ventilation. So B was the correct answer. That is it was a false statement. Okay. Let's move to the next one. Regarding the use of PEEP in patients with ARDS, which of the following is true? Okay, you have to find the true statement out of the following. High PEEP reduces ICU mortality compared with low PEEP. PEEP should be set below the lower inflection point on the pressure volume curve. High PEEP improves the PaO2 FiO2 ratio compared with low PEEP, and PEEP causes atelectrotrauma. Which one is true? You can answer in the chat box. C, someone has written C. C, someone again. Okay, let's see what the correct answer is. Correct answer C, all have written correctly. See, various randomized control trials suggest that high levels of PEEs improve both oxygenation and outcome compared with conventional levels. However, in these trials, high PEEP was one of the series of measures of protective ventilation strategies. One trial was done, which is called the alveoli trial, randomized the patient for a low versus high PEEP. There was no mortality benefit demonstrated. So PEEP does not have any mortality benefit. The rationale for the use of PEEP in atelectotrauma during the respiratory cycle damages the lung and can cause the release of cytokines which fuels the SARS. Application of PEEP, what happens? It prevents the repeated closure and therefore minimizes the lung damage. And recommended to set PEEP at a level of 2 centimeter of water more than the lower inflection point. In the question they had written lower than the lower inflection point, but the correct is it should be higher than the lower inflection point, 2 centimeter of water. Okay. This is the ARDS net protocol table. You all must be having access to it in your books. Please go and read it by heart. 1 or 2 questions definitely will come regarding ARDS and PEEP strategies, or how much the pH is to be maintained, how much tidal volume is to be kept. So you should be thorough with all these things. It is beyond the scope of this lecture, this 1 hour. I can teach everything. The important points I will be highlighting, you should go and read these things. Okay. Now, regarding tracheal stenosis as a complication of tracheostomy, which of the following is true? Okay, it is most commonly occurs at the site of tracheostomy tube cuff. It is much more common complication than tracheomalacia. Patients rarely show symptoms in the first 3 months following decannulation, and stridor is an early sign. See, someone has marked both B and C, but you have to answer one only, because this is not K type. This is A type question. So 2 answers you cannot mark. So which one? Maybe in this questions, what happens is 2 of the statements may be correct, but out of the 2 you have to mark the best one. Okay, 2 may be correct, which is the best option you feel that you have to mark it this. They may give 2 options as correct. Okay, so don't be confused with that. Yeah, most of you have given the answer correctly. The answer is B, that is patients rarely show symptoms in the first 3 months following decannulation. See, tracheal stenosis, it is a common complication of tracheostomy, occurs in 31% of the patients following a tracheostomy, but clinically significant only in very few, 3 to 12%. Commonest site of stenosis is at the level of the stoma and cephalad to the subglottic region, as given in the question. It was wrong. So distal stenosis, what they had given, it is less common. Next option was stridor. Stridor, it is a late sign. It's not an early sign, which signifies advanced stenosis. Now, next option was the majority of patients presents within 2 months, although late presentations several years after the tracheostomy is also well recognized. Tracheomalacia, which was given as a common, it is a very rare complication of tracheostomy. Okay, so B was the correct answer in this.